As you all know, the state of Florida is a persistent and abiding hellhole. One that is being made worse by not just the forces that be within Florida, but also just by the doings of average citizens. One such average citizen is a mom in Florida by the name of Daily Salinas. Now, Miss Salinas is basically one of the people behind getting a large number of books removed from her local school district. And one of those books was banned specifically because it included the poem read by Amanda Gorman at Joe Biden's inauguration. Additionally, she also got a number of books banned from related to black, but she also got a number of books banned related to African American history and Cuban history. These books were removed from the elementary schools and are now no longer available to school children. They were, but the state of Florida wants you all to know that once your kids get to middle school, they can finally access that naughty, naughty poem read to the entire country during Biden's inauguration. Okay? Yes. For those of you who don't remember, this is the particular poem being read at the inauguration by the incredibly dapper Amanda Gorman. Here we go.
Mr. President, Dr. Biden, Madam Vice President, Mr. Emhoff, Americans, and the world. When day comes, we ask ourselves, where can we find light in this never-ending shade? The loss we carry, a sea we must wade. We've braved the belly of the beast. We've learned that quiet isn't always peace, in the norms and notions of what just isn't always just is. And yet the dawn is ours before we knew it. Somehow we do it. Somehow we've weathered and witnessed a nation that isn't broken, but simply unfinished. We, the successors of a country and a time where a skinny black girl descended from slaves and raised by a single mother can dream of becoming president, only to find herself reciting for one. And yes, we are far from polished, far from pristine, but that doesn't mean we are striving to form a union that is perfect. We are striving to forge our union with purpose, to compose a country committed to all cultures, colors, characters, and conditions of man. And so we lift our gazes not to what stands between us, but what stands before us. We close the divide because we know to put our future first, we must first put our differences aside. We lay down our arms so we can reach out our arms to one another. We seek harm to none and harmony for all. Let the globe, if nothing else, say this is true. That even as we grieved, we grew, that even as we hurt, we hoped, that even as we tired, we tried, that we'll forever be tied together, victorious, not because we will never again know defeat, but because we will never again sow division. Scripture tells us to envision that everyone shall sit under their own vine and fig tree, and no one shall make them afraid. If we're to live up to our own time, then victory won't lie in the blade, but in all the bridges we've made. That is the promised glade, the hill we climb, if only we dare it, because being American is more than a pride we inherit. It's the past we step into and how we repair it. We've seen a force that would shatter our nation rather than share it, would destroy our country if it meant delaying democracy. And this effort very nearly succeeded. But while democracy can be periodically delayed, it can never be permanently defeated. In this truth, in this faith we trust, for while we have our eyes on the future, history has its eyes on us. This is the era of just redemption. We feared it at its inception. We did not feel prepared to be the heirs of such a terrifying hour, but within it we found the power to author a new chapter, to offer hope and laughter to ourselves. So, while once we asked, how could we possibly prevail over catastrophe? Now we assert, how could catastrophe possibly prevail over us? We will not march back to what was, but move to what shall be, a country that is bruised but whole, benevolent but bold, fierce and free. We will not be turned around or interrupted by intimidation, because we know our inaction and inertia will be the inheritance of the next generation. Our blunders become their burdens, but one thing is certain. If we merge mercy with might and might with right, then love becomes our legacy and change our children's birthright. So let us leave behind a country better than the one we were left. With every breath from my bronze-pounded chest, we will raise this wounded world into a wondrous one. We will rise from the gold-limbed hills of the west. We will rise from the wind-swept northeast, where our forefathers first realized revolution. We will rise from the lake-rimmed cities of the Midwestern states. We will rise from the sun-baked south. We will rebuild, reconcile, and recover in every known nook of our nation, in every corner called our country. Our people, diverse and beautiful, will emerge battered and beautiful. When day comes, we step out of the shade of flame and unafraid. The new dawn blooms as we free it. For there is always light, if only we're brave enough to see it, if only we're brave enough to be it.
Now, I don't know about you all, but I found that performance and that reading to be really beautiful and inspiring and patriotic. Did any of you, while listening to that, perceive it as full of indirect hate messages? Anyone? Did any of you feel that that was full of hatred? Well, you see, Miss Salinas challenged Amanda Gorman's poem in the Miami-Dade County School District on the basis that it contained indirect hate messages. Now, you've all seen the full performance of this speech. You've listened to it. You've heard the words. And I don't think any interpretation of this poem could arrive at the conclusion that it's full of hatred. I don't think that's actually a thing that one could do if you are being intellectually honest. But, you know, also, of course, this is kind of an important part of this story as published by the Jewish Telegraphic Agency. Miss Salinas hasn't read the entire text of the poem, let alone listened to it. She actually has no idea what the content of the poem is. And not only did she not read it, the review committee clearly decided not to read it either, because they said, and I'm going to quote, they erred on the side of caution by removing it from schools. What caution? What in there was at all objectionable? So when people talk about banning books in Florida, by the way, this is what they mean. Why are you removing this piece of poetry from classrooms? There's nothing in there that was objectionable. They were able to play it live on live television to the entire country. Did they object to it being inspiring? I suppose. I suppose so. Miss Salinas also petitioned the school district to remove books about the black poet Langston Hughes. And also, again, black and Cuban history. Now, for those of you who don't know, Langston Hughes wrote quite a bit about the artistic movement in Harlem. Yeah. Oh, I'm gonna go out on a limb here. There are a lot of there's a lot of speculation that Langston Hughes was gay. So I'm gonna go out on a limb and guess that the fact that he's a possibly gay man of color who wrote poetry and also wrote nonfiction. I'm gonna guess that that played probably a role in the "don't say gay" state of Florida. So, just gonna go out on a limb there. And you might be like, well, Jack, you're not being fair. Why would you speculate that it's because he's gay? Well, the Jewish Telegraph Agency did a little bit of digging and found Miss Salinas' Facebook. And on Miss Salinas' Facebook, she posted a number of interesting and horrific far-right propaganda posts, including praise for the anti-Semitic protocols of the Elders of Zion. The post that she shared on her Facebook, which has since been deleted after coverage of this came out, includes a list of steps depicting how Jewish Zionists would achieve world domination. The graphic included stages such as place our agents and helpers everywhere, replace royal rule with socialist rule, then communism, then despotism, and sacrifice people, including Jews sometimes, when necessary. When reached out to by the Jewish Telegraph Agency on Wednesday, Salinas confirmed that the post about the protocols of the Elders of Zion were indeed hers and apologized for it, saying she hadn't read beyond the word communism. Salinas said her aversion to communism stems from her Cuban identity. She added that English is not her first language. This is a quote from her. "I see the word communism and I think it's something about communism," she said. "I didn't read the words." I'm sorry. I'm sorry. If you are so deep into the anti-Semitic whirlpool that you are posting the protocols of the Elders of Zion, which is literally over a centuries old repackaging of anti-Semitic tropes that go back over 1,000 years, you are deep into that. This isn't like you whoopsie daisied yourself into this, okay? If you're posting and reposting stuff like that, you are actively a part of like a neo-Nazi forum. There's not like an overlap between like good salt of the earth Republicans and people who post the protocols of the Elders of Zion. Okay. Well, yeah, obviously the protocols of the Elders of Zion, for those who don't know, is like just a bunch of lies printed in Russia in like the late 1800s, I think. And it's like I think they were originally taken from a stage play from like a century earlier that was making fun of anti-Semites. But of course, anti-Semites then ripped the satire right out of that and published it as fact, you know? So yeah, the lady behind getting a bunch of books on Black and Cuban history banned in Florida is just openly posting the protocols of the Elders of Zion publicly. Um, she said that her heart became tight with pain when she thought people would see her as anti-Semitic for sharing the protocols of the Elders of Zion post. Yeah. Selena said she was speaking with JTA after declining to talk with other media outlets so that she could apologize. She said she is Christian and added, "This is this is wild. We are super protective of the Jewish people." She added that she has Jewish friends and is a fan of the Israeli Netflix series Fauda. I have Jewish friends. How could I hate Jews? Look, I might have posted the protocols of the Elders of Zion that claims that the Jews have a systematic process for taking over the world and, stealing the blood of Christians. But, we're very protective of the Jews, though. We're very protective of them. I have some Jewish friends, and you know what? I even watched a show made by a Jew once. Like, get the fuck out of here, lady. Get the fuck out of here. Get the fuck out of here. Did she really just? Yup, she really just. When asked about the books about Cuba that she challenged, she said, they don't tell the whole story about Cuba, communism, the dictators. They're people that are dying and trying to come to America. Yeah. Man, like, I know Cuba, like, Cuba's a contentious issue in America, right? But I feel like once you, like, learn about Cuban history, like, a lot of it makes sense. A lot of it makes a whole lot of sense, you know? Um, I'm a Jewish guy in Florida, and she's absolutely a type of person down here. We don't need their help. Yeah. Oh, God. She did the meme. Yeah, she did the meme. Like, guys, guys, for some context, in case you guys never learned like Cuban history, I'm gonna give you like Babby's first history of Cuba, okay? Specifically, starting like around World War II, okay? Pearl Harbor gets bombed. Cuba, who at that point is in good with America, declares war on Japan 2 days later, okay? In like 1940 something, Batista becomes elected as president, and then proceeds to like rule the country for like almost a decade, I think. I need to refresh it, but essentially, after he's out of office, he moves to Florida and continues running Cuba just through proxies. And essentially, then in like the 1952, his opponent looks like he's gonna win, so he comes back and does a military coup. and then takes over as a dictator and a member of the military. And while he has this kind of military regime in the 50s, he starts cracking down and torturing civilians and like killing protesters. They shut down like the Havana University. With Guevara that Che, I believe, is Colombian. No, what you're thinking of? God, you're thinking of Fidel Castro. Um, so Fidel Castro tries to attack the Batista regime at this point. He's a young attorney. The attack doesn't go very well. He retreats into the hills and kind of like plans his next moves. Che is Argentina. My bad. Um, do, do, do. Oh, sorry. He was killed in Bolivia. My bad. Okay. Che Guevara was killed in Bolivia. He played a role in the uprising in Cuba. Yeah. There we go. That's the confusing part, okay? He's from Argentina. He played a role in the Cuban Revolution. He went around all of Latin America, and eventually died in Bolivia. There you go. But essentially, the crackdowns and the military action began to replace any kind of like pretense of democracy in Cuba. And also during the Batista years, basically, and this is from JFK. Like JFK estimates that America owned about 90% of Cuba's industry during these years. And yeah, wasn't working out super great for a lot of people in Cuba, but for some of the people at the top, they made a whole lot of money. They basically turned Havana into the Las Vegas of the Caribbean. And then the popular uprising, along with Fidel Castro, basically put a lot of pressure on Batista until basically the U.S. was like, "Hey, you really should retire because they're gonna fucking kill you, and we're not gonna support you anymore." And so he fled the country, tried to go to Mexico. They wouldn't let him in. The U.S. wouldn't let Batista in either, for the record. And then, yeah. But he also fled with, like, almost $750 million, you know? So it was all... He was not... He did not die poor, okay? The Batista regime were doing deals with the American mafia. Well, they were doing deals with the American mafia, but also they kept replacing the democratic process with just, what are you going to do about it? We have police who are going to kill you or make you disappear. Some of the estimates of the Batista years estimate that around 20,000 Cubans were killed. And a lot... I did some looking. A lot of the estimates of over, like, how many people the Castro regime killed lump in a lot of their, like, foreign wars. Like, it's not the same as, like, a counter-terror campaign where they're executing people in the streets, you know? Which is what the Batista regime did. How do you flee with that much money? He fled with a bunch of, like, artwork and, like solid gold and stuff. Yeah. Yeah, it was messy and bad, and then Fidel Castro came into power, and, like, basically, like, yeah, there were a lot of things the Castro regime did that were bad. You know, they very much followed in the Soviet model of, like, clamping down on freedom of speech. They did a lot of things to restructure the economy, which basically made people who were previously very wealthy very, very upset. And so you had like tens of thousands of people trying to get out of Cuba because they didn't want to live under the conditions of this new economy, really. And also, like, Cuba was put into kind of a tight spot. They went to war for like many years in Angola. They became reliant on like the Soviet Union for payouts. It wound up being not great, and like the standard of life kind of went downhill when the price of oil dropped. Like they went from like being able to like drive around and really maintain like a lot of their at least middle class, working class lifestyle. But when the price of oil dropped, like they had to like institute like 16-hour long like electricity blackouts. They had to like go into rationing. People had to switch back to using like oxen to like till fields. Like it wasn't really great during the economic downturns in Cuba, which further alienated a lot of people. But like a lot of the Cuban diaspora in Florida will talk about it. We'll talk about the Batista years with like, you know, this kind of like glowing memory, like it was some kind of amazing like time to be in Cuba, and like, no, no, it wasn't. For most of the people in Cuba, no, it wasn't. Um, Castro also tried to bring forth the apocalypse during the Cuban Missile Crisis. Yeah, I mean that wasn't great either. No, that's true. But like if you look at like a lot of his policies over the long term, like a lot of them, it seemed like he had his heart in the right place. Like one of the reasons he was so committed to the war in Angola was because he believed it would bring about the end of apartheid in South Africa, which kind of did in a way, you know. Um, Like the thought being that if South Africa committed enough of its forces to Angola, um, they wouldn't be able to maintain control over the predominantly black population. So, yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly. KBS. A lot of the Cubans in Miami were pro Batista, and also like were part of the initial wave that got released. There was and also this, by the way, it's not to say that Castro was like a great guy. He was good in a lot of ways, but like pretty fucking awful at a lot of others. Like for example, he used the opportunity when he opened kind of the ability for people to emigrate to the United States. He used the opportunity to like deport like gay people and like the mentally ill. So it, you know, not great in a lot of regards, you know. Was Cuba the one where Nixon said they would make their economy scream? Probably. Sounds a bit. Sounds about right. Yeah, and that's the thing. Lily loves stuff. When we're talking about places that are really fucked, um, in a lot of ways, there are going to be bad actors, and we'll get to that. I think when we talk about Ukraine in a bit. But yeah, conflict and revolution don't often bring about like the ideal outcomes, you know. Um, and it's very rare that you get um a perfect leader of any kind under any system, but like the revolution and violence often do not facilitate like the best types of folks coming into power. But I'd say that Cuba probably could have done a whole lot worse than Castro. So in that regard, I suppose it's good, relatively, you know. The Nixon quote was regarding Chile. Okay, I don't know much about Nixon. Um, yeah, Gamergy. Yeah, the whole if a Cuban steps foot on U.S. soil, they become a citizen. Imagine if we did that for like all of Latin America. That would actually be a pretty based policy. True, one-hand wonder. True. And surprise, surprise, going back to this story about Miss Salinas posting the Protocols of the Elders of Zion. She also is a fervent member of Moms for Liberty. There are there are videos of her attending Moms for Liberty protests. She's also been seen on video with Proud Boys, who are frequently extremely anti-Semitic. Yeah, it's not great. And this is part of a larger removal of books on various topics. But there are also a lot of books being removed about the Holocaust and Jewish culture, which makes this all seem to dovetail and come together in a pretty horrible way. So, yeah. When asked why she wanted the books removed in the first place, she said she had just been expressing her opinion that the books did not support the curriculum of the school, but did not elaborate at all. She said that she had only read parts of the books. They have to read for me because I'm not an expert, she said. I am not a reader. I'm not a book person. I'm a mom involved in my children's education. Well, if you're a mom involved in your children's education, maybe you should have had them read the entire book to you before you succeeded in getting it banned. And maybe the school board shouldn't have been quite so receptive to your demands to get it removed. This is just insane. Interesting. When the JTA reached out to the school board and a representative of the school district, the statement they put out said no literature, books, or poem has been banned or removed, and that it was determined at the school that Gorman's poem was better suited for middle school students. In publicly available meeting minutes, the review committee said the vocabulary of Gorman's poem was determined to be of value for middle school students. So, and similarly, that the content and subject matter of the Hughes poems were determined to be for middle school readers. But, why should they not be made available to elementary schoolers that they were previously available to? Strange. Anyway, I thought it was interesting to note that one of the prominent figures that is getting books banned in one of the largest school districts in the country, Miami-Dade, is just posting like anti-Semitism. Hasn't actually read any of the books or any of the poems she got removed. And it literally took no effort. It takes no effort, guys, for these people to come in and ruin childhood education. They, like, show up. One person shows up at one of these meetings and goes like, I think this book is bad. And then the school board goes, indeed. Well, now that we look at it, it's actually more suited for high schoolers. We'll just put it in the dusty back room in the high school where that we keep locked. Okay. Next complainant. And then they're like, "Oh, we didn't ban it. You can still technically get it." It's so easy because in Florida they have facilitated a system where if you're conservative, you can just be like, "I got a problem with that. My deeply held conservative beliefs do not support this type of rhetoric or behavior." And then well, then they just get rid of the thing that you're objecting to, I guess. Maybe if she was less of an anti-Semite, she'd also appreciate why book bans are bad. like, like, goodness sake.